In the summer of 1964, 1,000 students from northern universities prepared to go to Mississippi to teach Southern blacks about their voting rights as full citizens of the country. President Johnson signed a civil rights bill in July. In a naive sense, there was to be the beginning of the end of black oppression, but generations of hatred cannot be diminished. The student actions was spearheaded by COFL, the Council of Federation Organizations. It was an umbrella group that created an alphabet soup of organizations intent on winning civil rights for blacks. The mission was called the Summer Project. Civil rights workers working in Ohio knew their efforts would be countered by violence and terror, but they had no idea how far it would go or how fast it would escalate. For COFL, Mississippi, with its long history of segregation and rampant racial hatred, the hardest part of the change and the biggest problem.
We travel the state. We might be in Natchez, we might be in Philadelphia, we might be in Hattiesburg, working violent crimes committed against citizens of Mississippi. Therefore, we were away from our homes, and we would receive threats. Snakes were placed in mailboxes. There was always that threat, you better lock your car. You never knew what you might find in your automobile when you return. And also you had threats against your person and family.
Despite all attempts of intimidation, the FBI's presence in the state was about to increase more than 100-fold. As the invasion grew nearer, the citizens steeled themselves against it. By daylight, it went on as it always has, and people whispered of the unpleasantness to come. But when night fell, words turned into actions, and the Ku Klux Klan, the invisible empire, began to stir. It wouldn't stay invisible for setting up their COFL Operations Center in the Meridian, Mississippi. Michael Schorner and his wife Rita were joined by a 20-year-old plasterer named James Chaney. Chaney, a Meridian native, knew the political climate of the area. 24-year-old Michael Schorner, a liberal from the Bronx, had an Ivy League degree in social work. His background couldn't have been more different from Chaney's, but the men untied in their goals. Schorner's friends called him Mickey, a name he seldom heard outside the office.
People, and I'm talking now about the Klansmen in Meridian, called him Goatee. He wore a goatee, and they called him the Devil.
Schorner and Chaney were later joined by Andrew Goodman, age 20, a volunteer from Queens, New York, who had just finished his training from Ohio just a week before. While Rita Schorner returned to New York, the three men and other volunteer staff prepared for the first group of civil rights workers from up north. The first wave of the invasion, scheduled to arrive on June 21, 1964. That morning, Schorner and Chaney and Goodman drove from their base in Meridian to Longwood, 35 miles away, to talk to the members of Mount Zion Church about the fire that took place 5 days before. Chaney, who knew the area, would drive. As the vanguard and the march to freedom, the men knew the trouble likely laying ahead. Their ground rules were ambiguous. Stick to the main road, cooperate with authorities, and never travel at night. They planned to be back that afternoon. Schorner told his staff to call the COFL office in Jackson if he didn't phone in by 4 p.m. He never made the call. When Mickey Schorner failed to phone his office at the scheduled time, the FBI was notified. They turned in, contacted the local authorities to see if anyone has seen Schorner, Chaney, or Goodman. Someone had. According to the Neshoba County Deputy Cecil Price, the trio was returning from Longwood that afternoon when he pulled them over outside of Philadelphia, Mississippi. 38 miles from Meridian. They were brought to the county jail in Philadelphia. Cheney was booked on a speeding charge. The others were held in the connection of the burning of Mount Zion Church. Cheney was held in a cell designated for colored prisoners. Schwerner and Goodman shared a different cell. They weren't allowed to make a phone call until dinner. Hours after their 4 o'clock call, time had passed. According to another person sharing the cell, when the jailer's wife told Schwerner he could make a collect call, he declined, and nobody knows why. Eventually, after Schwerner has paid Cheney's $20 bond, Deputy Price released the men. By then, it was 10:30 p.m. What would happen next was anyone's guess.
As long as they were missing, you had some hope. If they had turned up in jail and they were still in jail, then you had some hope. The issue was the release at a certain time of night from the jail, and then they're missing again. So that circumstance means the worst.
On June 25th, 2 days after their disappearance, their station wagon was found. 2 Cheyenne Indians from a nearby reservation came across the smoldering vehicle the following evening. It had been burned near a swampy area called the Bobachita Creek, 50 feet from the highway. When they learned of its possible significance, they called the FBI. Special Agent Jay Coughlin was called from Washington, an expert in firearms and explosives who has seen more than his fair share of civil violence. When he arrived at the scene, he wasn't optimistic about what the car would reveal.
In examining the burned out vehicle, we were looking for any evidence of human remains. We were also looking then for any evidence that may have been left behind of any value in determining what happened to the civil rights workers.
The car was too far gone to provide any clues. But nearby, investigators found something more important. A watch, later identified as belonging to Schwerner, keys to the car. The watch had stopped at 12:45. It took no time at all for the news of the discovery to spread.
The vehicle hadn't been recovered very long before the news was out on the police wires and the press wires and the neighbors' wires and the radio and so on. And we started to run a stadium at Bogchito, and that wasn't easy.
For those so inclined, the discovery of the car only supported the idea of a hoax, but unofficially, the hopes of finding the bodies alive were gone.
It was obvious from the beginning that we weren't leaving until the bodies were located. Mr. Hoover wouldn't have countenanced that, and for that matter, neither would the general public. We were going to find those bodies.
400 sailors from the Meridian Naval Air Station were pressed into duty, working in rotating shifts. Woods were scouted, rivers were dragged, and the FBI received news of a black man's body pulled from the river. They went to investigate. Though Vicksburg was 140 miles away, it was possible that Cheney may have floated down the river. It was the only lead in an otherwise dismal search.
We discovered that that this body was not that of one of the missing civil rights workers. It was determined that he was the victim of a Klan lynching.
It wouldn't be the only victim this summer, as other lynching victims' bodies had surfaced. Some had gone unreported, because in some areas, the Klan was the law. Finding the missing civil workers were the FBI's first priority, but busting the Klan was the ultimate goal. 6 months before the students were expected in Mississippi, Schwerner established the base of operations. Schwerner had approached Mount Zion Methodist Church of the nearby black community of Longwood, where permission to use their space for a coffle meeting. The residents of Longwood, who would peacefully coexist next to their white neighbors, found themselves at the church had to weigh the clause to the effects of the civil rights against the concern for their own personal safety. When the meeting was adjourned, they hadn't come to an accord, but the Klan made the decision for them. Many church members, including women, were badly beaten. Later that night, Mount Zion Church was burned to the ground. Though the fire was never investigated by local authorities, the FBI opened a file on the incident. They were keeping a record of possible federal law violations that may fall under their domain. They knew that once the students arrived, the summer promised long and hot. The FBI called the file Mississippi Burning. They conducted their own investigation, asking church members what they saw that night. Though the Klan members had masks on their faces, many recall seeing a man in a truck wearing a sheriff's hat, suggesting law enforcement was involved. It wasn't surprising. Many in the South resented the federal government's intrusive push for integration. As the drive for voter registration vote continued, the hot Mississippi air crackled with hatred. Klan activity intensified. More than 60 black homes, businesses, and churches were burned that summer. And that was just the beginning.
I saw the violence. I saw the killing. I saw the people left homeless by fires. I saw churches burned in the middle of the night. I saw lives being lost for no reason whatsoever, by a group that felt they were right.
President Johnson authorized a new FBI office, opened in Jackson, Mississippi 3 weeks after the men disappeared. According to Agent Ingram, the days of subtlety were gone. The FBI was taking its gloves off.
In a matter of a few months, you had almost 300 agents working up and down. From this state runs about 400 miles from the coast up to the border of Tennessee, so we covered every facet of it. 82 counties, we had agents all over the place.
While some agents continued to beat the bushes, others began to knock on doors. People were polite, but uncooperative. The FBI's tactic was to divide and conquer. Agents would attend Klan rallies, take photographs, copy down license plates, until they were asked to leave. By then, they had what they had come for.
Then, the next time we talk with them, they say, I'm not a member of Klan. Well, you were at this Klan meeting. Why were you there? If you're not a member, you're a sympathizer. Do you know these people blew up a church? Do you know these people blew up a school that was trying to desegregate? Is this the way you want to operate? And most would say no. So we found that being at some of the meetings was a deterrent for some. Some would stop coming because they didn't want us to visit them.
Mr. Hood, Mr. Mark Duncan, are you two gentlemen in agreement that we have a unanimous verdict with reference to the 3 counts of this indictment?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Moran, Mr. McIntyre, are you in agreement that we have a unanimous verdict with reference to all 3 counts of the indictment?
Yeah, I believe the defendant wants to poll the jury himself.
Well, I think that would be improper. That would be improper. All right. I'm going to let this jury be retired to the jury room, please. Just a minute. Before you are dispersed, I know it's been a trying several days for you. The court appreciates your attention and your services. File the verdict. Sheriff, you come in.
All persons will remain in the courtroom. No persons will be permitted to leave until I make that announcement.